Welcome back everybody, Jesse here, and in today's video we're going to start working on our inventory widget blueprint. By the end of the video, what you should have is something similar like this. Press tab and we get our little window popping up here. Now I know it looks a little bit simplistic, but there's quite a bit going on underneath the hood, a little bit of work to be able to get this to function where you can bring the menu back up, take it back off, and this is going to set some things up for us moving forward to be able to manipulate, drag and drop all our inventory items around in this screen. So yeah, don't let the look of it fool you. Sit back, relax, and let's get this thing going. I'd like to give a special thanks to all my Patreon supporters that you see here on the screen. If you'd like to support the channel, go ahead and head over to my Patreon or buy me a coffee page. Link should be up in the cards right now. If you haven't joined my Discord at this point, then go ahead and check the other links up in the cards and head over to the Discord and join the community over there. Alright, so this user interface that we're going to be building today was inspired by a video I saw from Ruben Ward. Now, it's not a very aesthetically pleasing user interface, as you saw at the beginning of the video, but it's going to be very functional for our needs. This is a good starting off point. The user interface or the user experience that you build is very dependent on the game you're working on. So with the artwork, the layout, things like that. But the techniques that we're going to learn in this tutorial, in this video today, should be a good jumping off point whenever you need a widget this needs to dynamically change, or we need to add content to or remove items from it. It's very handy for things like what we're doing today with the inventory. Go ahead and open up your content drawer, and inside here, let's go to user widget, add a new widget blueprint, select user widget, and let's name this WBP for widget blueprint underscore inventory window. Let's open up this bad boy. And inside here, I'm going to go to where it says fill screen. I'm going to drop it down and select desired. What this is going to allow us to do is to build a widget that's not going to be dependent on the screen space. It's going to be DPI scale is going to be a 1.0. So what we're going to do with this widget is we're going to be able to take this and we're going to be able to drop it into our widget HUD widget. The nice thing about doing it this way is any changes we make here will be reflected in any other widget that we're using it in. In our current HUD widget, we're going to end up actually having this in there probably twice, because we're going to have our normal inventory, and then when we open up a storage, we're going to have a second one. So if we end up making changes to the way the inventory looks, then all we have to do is just change this one widget blueprint and it will update to any other widget that we're currently using it in. So if you've never used the user interface, the widget blueprint design window here, think of it kind of like a table inside Microsoft Word. It's really kind of difficult to lay things out and get it structured, but with some fancy use of the available items that you have to put inside the tables and the way you can structure your rows and cells, you can kind of get some unique things. It's kind of the same concept in here. So your horizontal box and your vertical box, those are really going to end up being your friend to help organize and get things put into a place that looks right for you. But for the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a canvas panel. What this canvas panel is going to end up doing is it's going to allow us to resize our widget. Without this, we wouldn't be able to change the size of our widget window here. So I'm just going to drop that in here. That's going to be our primary container for everything. But the one that's everything else is really going to kind of rely on is going to be this first vertical box. I'm going to take this vertical box, drop it on the canvas panel, and there we go. We got this vertical box in here, and now everything we're going to do is going to be built inside of this vertical box. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to change its name to window. This is going to be our primary window. And then inside this window, now because we added this canvas panel, now we can change the size. If we hadn't added that canvas panel in here, we wouldn't be able to change the size X and the size Y, because it would be the primary, and inside the primary you can't set the size of it. So with that, now we can set the size. So for me, I'm just going to set this for now to a size of 535 in the X, and then in the Y I'm going to make it 635. All right, and this is just because I was playing with it. You know, I know what size I need for this, but A lot of this is going to depend. You're going to see as we move forward in the next couple of videos working on this inventory window. We're going to have a bunch of buttons that we're going to put in here that will be representative of all the items in our inventory. So whatever size you make this is going to depend on the size of your buttons, because we're going to end up using a scroll box and a wrap box. And with those, it's kind of dependent on how big you make those. So you'll see as we move forward, but not too big of a deal. This is just going to give us a good starting point for what we're going to be needing. All right, so inside the window now, I'm going to go ahead and grab a horizontal box, and I'm going to drop it in here on the window. And now this horizontal box, really the only thing this is going to be used for that is going to be for adjusting what we have inside of it horizontally, so that way we can center it up inside here. So let me show you what I mean. Now I'm going to grab a vertical box, and I'm going to grab and drop it inside of the horizontal box, and inside that vertical box I'm going to take a text, drop it on the vertical box. I'm going to grab one more text, and I'm going to drop it on the vertical box again. So now we're in a vertical box, and now we have our two texts are on top of each other. So this first one, I'm going to select this, and I'm actually going to change its text block here to say your items. And then this bottom one, I'm going to change this to say click to use an item. And this I'm going to change to a font size of 13. So now what I was talking about with the horizontal box, we're going to come in here, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to choose center it and center it. All right, you probably don't really need to change this one. You can set it here, you can see it's not really changing, but if we end up adding something else underneath here, then this would keep it centered inside of this as everything moves vertically. So you might actually want it to stay up at the very top. So I'll just go ahead and leave it there for now, because if this expands vertically further down, then now this will always remain up towards the top. All right, so this vertical box is now done. Grab a overlay, which is here under panel, overlay, and I'm going to drop it on our window. All right, now this overlay, this is just going to be a container for us, which we're going to grab an image, and I'm going to drop it on top of this overlay. And this image, I'm going to change its name to be background. And it doesn't need to be a variable. You can, if you want to change the color of this dynamically or add an image to it or something dynamically, then it can be a variable, but we don't need it as a variable. So I'm going to deselect that. Later, if you need it, then you can go ahead and re-add it. So if you wanted to add an image to your background, this is going to fill up our primary area where all our items are going to be. If you want to add an image, then in here under brush is where you would do it. Here's an image, and you can click it there. So, but for now, for my needs, I'm just going to select a color, and I'm just going to go black and select OK. Now I need a scroll box right here. I'm going to grab a scroll box, and I'm going to drop it on top of the window. And inside the scroll box, I'm going to grab a wrap box and drop it down there. So now we got a wrap box inside of the scroll box. Now this wrap box is going to be what we're going to actually store all of our information in. All right, all of our inventory items, which as represented inside the UI will be a bunch of buttons for you to be able to click and drag them around. So I'm going to change the name of this to be inventory box, and this one I will check to be is variable. So I noticed over here though that what we need to do, you can see things are kind of out of alignment right here. So I'm going to grab this scroll box. This should actually be nested underneath the overlay. So I'm just going to drag it and drop it on top of the overlay. And there we go. Now you can see everything's just kind of nested here together. You're also going to notice our background isn't quite the size here. So select your background, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select to fill it that way as well as fill it vertically. Now you're going to notice that it didn't quite fill up all the way down here either. So what we're going to do is come up here to the overlay, because this is a container for the background color. So the background's filling up the overlay, but the overlay isn't filling up its parent, which is the window. So with the overlay selected, come over here to the size, and instead of auto, we're going to select fill, and 1.0 represents 100%. So the entire background will be filled up. So now you can see here this overlay with the black background is pushed right up to the edges, but our scroll box where this is the area in which all our inventory items are going to be housed, it pushes right up against the edge as well. So this could have some difficulty being able to see the edges of your icons. It's not going to look really good. So what I'm going to do with my scroll box, I'm going to come up here to padding, and I'm going to change the padding to 10. So that by entering just 10 up here, it's going to add a 10 pixel padding to all sides. If you wanted to do something more or less, you can just drop it down and you can add individual padding to whichever side that you want. So this is pretty much going to wrap up the look of our inventory window right at this point. You can come back and you can change any style of this as you want, but this is what we're going to use moving forward for our needs. So with that done, let's make sure to go ahead and compile and save it and open up your primary HUD widget. When you used to create a widget, you would end up with an automatic canvas panel in here, but it doesn't look like they like to do that here in 5.0. So let's grab a canvas panel now and let's drop it here on our primary HUD. So now we got our canvas panel, and this is going to be the size of our screen represented down here at 1280 by 720, but this is all dynamic, so you don't have to worry about the particular screen size that you want, the DPI scale. You can change all this DPI scale. We're not going to get into that today, but you can find other videos about it elsewhere talking about the DPI scale and how when you select this, you can actually change how it all scales. Close that down. So back in here into our primary HUD, we've got our panel. So now what we need to do is now we just come up here to user created, select the WEP inventory window and drag and drop it and put it right on the canvas panel. So there we go. It's right into its place. And you can see it kind of looks a little bit funny here. It's actually represented by this little box right there. But what we need to do is come over here to size to content, select that, and that's going to fill up the entire space. And that's, you don't necessarily need to do that. I mean, we created the widget to be a specific size, but the problem with doing it like that is right now you can see this green box around here. That's reserving that space on the interface. Okay, so by having it here, and you could take this, and this is what I was talking about earlier about being dynamic. Some things you can take and you can drag and drop around when you're setting up things like this, but generally speaking, you can't really do that when you're building the widgets. However, this reserves the space for it, so just size it to content. It's going to size it to whatever it is, which is set inside of this widget blueprint. So now if we go back and we change the size of this down the road, being sized to content, this will dynamically change with whatever size we end up making it. All right, so I'm going to set this in a particular position for now, and I'm going to do an X position of 50 and a Y position of 25. So that's just going to kind of set it here. I've got the anchor point here. You can set it wherever you want. We can look into later doing things dynamically, like making this be in the center when you're just looking at your inventory, and then having it move when you're looking at multiple inventories. There's a bunch of different ways you could do it. Really, it's going to depend on your game. For prototyping right now, this is going to be a good way for us to go. So now when we have our storage inventory, we'll end up dropping another one of these in here, and we'll set it in here to be the same position. We'll also have our little hotbar down here moving forward. So that's pretty much going to be the layout of our design. There's going to be some more things that we could do so we can see it. So let's go ahead and open up our project settings. In our project settings, go down to input, and under the action mapping, let's add a new one. I'm going to name this one Open Inventory. Select the keyboard icon right here, and I'm going to hit the tab key. So now whenever we press the tab key, our inventory will open up. So we're done with our project settings for now. So go ahead and close that back out. Come in here to our blueprint true FP, our first person blueprint character. Inside here under begin play, we need to be able to see our HUD. So if we right click and go create widget and select the function there, under class, find our primary HUD widget, and then let's go ahead and hook this up. Then come over here and right click on the return value. Let's promote this to a variable. I'm going to call this primary HUD. This way we have access to our HUD widget whenever we need it, because we'll need it a bunch moving forward. And dragging off of the set pin here, let's go add to viewport. We always want this HUD displayed on the screen. Eventually it'll show us things like our health or stamina, things like that. We're going to be able to dynamically change the visibility of our inventory and any other items that we need. So now if we come down here and let's go open inventory, select that, and now every time we press tab, we're going to run a function off of here. But I don't really want to just add the item here, right? There's going to be some things that we have moving down, like when we have to interact with storage and things like that. We want the storage to be able to easily interact with our player and therefore our widget as well. So what we need to do is we're going to set up an interface that we can use and we can call from any other blueprint, because the character player is an easy item, easy object to be able to get access to from any other blueprint. So let's go ahead and open up our content drawer and go to our interface file here, right click, and under blueprints, let's create a new blueprint interface. I'm going to name mine BI, select in here, BI underscore interact HUD. Now let's open this guy up, and in here the first function I'm going to name is, I'm going to just call this one open player inventory. Again, we're going to have a few in here as we move forward as the game progresses. That's going to allow other items like the storage units, the inventory components, to be able to interact with the widget blueprint, because that's what we're going to need going forward. At this point, we don't need any inputs or outputs, so let's compile it, save it, and go back to our true first-person character. And under the class settings, let's find the interfaces, and let's go ahead and add an interface. Type in BI, and here's the Interact HUD. So go ahead and select that, and you're going to see over here, this is going to instantly pop open with interfaces. So now if we open this up, we're going to see the Open Player Interface. If we right-click on it, implement event, because we didn't add anything like an input or output, this is just going to be an event. And now if we added a return output for this inside of the interface, then this would become a function. So it doesn't really matter which one it is. Event is essentially just a function that doesn't have a return node attached to it. All right. Really quick, I just want to show you, let's take a look and see what this looks like on the screen. It's not going to be anything too spectacular. Let's hit play, take a look at it, and there we go. We've got the inventory window right there. So cool. Now we need to be able to call this and get rid of it at will. So go ahead and close the session back out. So what we need to do now is in our open inventory function, we need to grab the player controller. You could do this inside the player controller if you want, but we're gonna, for ease of access, we're gonna do all this inside of the player characters. It's gonna be a little bit easier because that's where our HUD is. So all the interface calls for the HUD we need to put through our player character. So let's grab get player controller. Now we don't have to cast this, we just need the regular player controller. So from here, let's go show mouse cursor, set show mouse cursor. Hook this up to the pressed, and we need to set this to true. So we want to see our mouse cursor so we can manipulate and drag and drop the inventory items. All right, and then from the player controller as well, let's go set input mode UI only. This up as well. And the widget to focus, let's go ahead and grab our primary HUD variable and set that in as the widget to focus. Dragging a couple reroute nodes to make this look a little nicer. All right, from here, now what we need to do is grab our, let's just grab our primary HUD variable again and set focus. Oops, focus. Now we want to set focus, not set user focus, just set focus on the widget. All right, and drag and drop off of that. Now this is important. There's going to be times as we move through this that you could possibly lose focus to your widget, which is going to make things unresponsive. So it's important that when we're manipulating, when we're inside the widget like this, that it is our primary focus. And if you have a different widget that you're going to use later on, you should try to make it your primary focus as well. So set the focus here. We're going to set something else inside the widget. You'll see in just a little bit that ensures that we keep focus on this primary widget. So that's kind of an important thing. I've learned that down the road. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So just make sure even though we're setting the widget to focus here, we want to ensure that the focus is set. All right, so now with that, the last thing we need to do is let's just go open player inventory. Generally speaking, you want to send a message to the player inventory, which would be right here, but we don't need to do that because it's on the player itself. It's on this this blueprint graph. So just leave it as target itself, and then once it gets through all this, it's going to go ahead and activate this. So what we need this to do, this is going to be, like I said earlier, this is going to be able to be called from anything else. So we need to set a function here that's actually going to allow us to see and manipulate the widget. So let's go back into our player HUD. And inside of our player HUD, let's go over here to the graph tab. I'm going to get rid of the pre-construct and the tick. We don't need that, at least for now. In here, let's go up to functions and let's add a new function. I'm going to call this one as show player inventory. And for this, we want an input value on this. And I'm going to name this one B show inventory. Keep it as a Boolean. So now that way we can just switch. If this is true or false, will dictate whether we set the visible or whether we can see the inventory or not. So how do we do that? Let's go over here to the designer really quick and select your inventory window. We need to come down here to the visibility of it. Under the behavior visibility, it's set to no hit testable right now. Let's go ahead and set it to collapsed. That means now whenever we start the game, this isn't going to be visible. It's going to be invisible. Collapse, it allows it to reserve its space within the graph like we talked about just a little bit ago. It reserves its space, but it's not visible. If you don't want it to reserve the space, you can choose hidden, and it won't occupy any layout space. So you're free to kind of design and put things over the top of it if you want. But collapsed is just fine for us for at this point. Later down the road, we may need hidden, but collapsed. So go back over here to the graph. And so now we need to grab our inventory window because we made it a variable earlier. Select this and go set visibility. All right, now what we're going to do is we're actually going to drag off of this enum right here because we get all those things that we just saw. We're going to drag off of this and we're actually going to go select. And what are we going to select? Grab the Boolean, put it down here as the index. So now if it's false, we need to set it to collapsed. And if it's true, keep it as visible. So now whenever this is called, if it comes in true, we'll be able to see our blueprint. Make sure we add a return node to it. You don't need to. Unreal let you get away with it, but good practice whenever you're inside a function, always have a return node. Because if you're writing this in C++, every function you have is going to have a return on it. Okay, so make sure you set that. So now if we go back to our true first person character and under the event open player inventory, now we just need to grab our primary HUD variable and go show player inventory. And the reason why we're doing this here, select this to true, because we want to show the player inventory when we press tab. Now, the thing with this is once we set this game mode UI only, we lose certain functionality. We won't be able to manipulate our keyboard very easily. So we can't close this back out. If we go like to set this to toggle between, isn't going to work. Tab, this function, we won't be able to reach this once we set this game mode to UI only. So we're going to fix that. But first, let's go ahead and compile it and save it. And let's go ahead and press play and see what it looks like. So now you can see that the inventory is gone. We press tab and there we go. We got our mouse cursor up. Our window pops up. You can probably hear me pressing the tab button right now and nothing happens. So hit escape. Now you're going to see here, we get this error. I did this intentionally. I wanted you to kind of see this error because it's important. You see we had set focus on the widget here. This is telling us that there's an error that we don't have focus. The widget doesn't support focusing. So what we need to do, you should set is focusable to true. So, okay, not a problem. Let's go ahead and clear that out and come back out here to the primary HUD. And under the class defaults of the primary HUD, scroll down until you find is focusable and set that to true. Now we won't get that error when we open up the inventory. So now how do we close the inventory system once we have it open? Well, like I said, you lose your functionality of your keyboard when you're in UI mode only. However, the widget, since we're in focus of this widget, and this is one of the main reasons why it's important that we have focus on this widget, is we're able to listen for key events on here. So the way we do that is we come over here to the functions list. You see there's 38 overridables. So if we select the override dropdown, you're going to find the one here that says on key down. Select that. We're going to override this function here. All right, let's go ahead and drag off of that, cut the execution. Now in the in key event, drag off of this and let's go get key. This is going to give us the key whenever a key is pressed. We want there's more than just getting the key here off of the event. So we specifically want the key off of this. Okay, so drag off of this and go equals equal. And we want to check, is it equal to, select the keyboard icon here, tab. So are we pushing the tab again? Because that's our key that we designated to go in. You could set this key to be something else, a little bit more dynamic if you don't want to have the tab key, or you want the ability to change the tab key. You could do something a little bit more dynamic and get what's actually being used for the open inventory function key press. But for now, we know it's tab, so I'm just setting tab. If you don't want to do this, another thing you can do in the designer here, I originally had it, but I took it out. I don't want to show it here. Is you could put like a little red X up here in the corner that you can click to close it, kind of like a Microsoft window that you can close down. I took it out because it looks kind of tacky and I don't really want it in my project moving forward, so I took that out. But you can also just not have the tab as well, because the other one we're going to end up checking here. So let's go equal equal again. Select the keyboard, escape. So now if we're in our inventory and we press escape, then that will also exit. So I'm going to come over here, drag off of it, and I'm going to do an OR node. So put both these in here. So is the key press tab or escape? If it is, run a branch here. And if it is, then what do we want to do? We want to be able to close our menu. So how do we close our menu? Well, let's create a new function for that. And I'm going to call this new function close menu. Oops, I accidentally added a slash there, close menu. So this is essentially going to just do the opposite of what we did inside of the player character. So let's get player controller. And let's go show mouse cursor. And we're going to set this to false. We don't want to see the mouse cursor anymore. Drag off of this and let's go ahead and go set input mode to game only. All right, and then now let's go ahead and show player inventory. And now we want to make sure that this shows false. Okay, we don't want anything there. Add in your return node. And now we've got our close menu. So head back down to on key down. Grab our close menu and hook it into true. So if it is true, we want to close down our inventory. And let's go ahead and add another return node here into the false. Now, if you've never worked with these like on key down, you've got this return value here, you will get an error. You have to have, I think we compile it right here. It's gonna give us some warnings. These must have a handle on it. So either you have to give it either a handle or unhandled event value going through. So we're just gonna pass in handled, means we handled the situation of this just fine. And grab a second one and put it in here and tag it into that one. So now when we compile it, we don't get any errors, so no problem. So handled or unhandled. So you can, the reason why they have unhandled here, it's like passing true or false. Did we succeed? True. Did we not succeed? False. So if you need this to have like special error detection, when this fails, then you can do unhandled here and you can do your error, any error handling that you have at that point. But generally speaking, you're always going to want to handled on all of these. All right, so we got that. So now we can close down our menu when we open it. One last thing I want to do before we leave the primary HUD widget is go back into the event graph and right click. Here's another one we're going to end up kind of overriding. Let's go on focus lost. So here's another overridable event that we have in here. On focus lost, let's put in a branch here. So the way we're going to check this is get player controller, show mouse cursor. Let's get the show mouse cursor on this one. So because if we're in the widget, then our mouse cursor is being shown. So that's an easy true or false of whether we're actually inside this widget blueprint or not. Because if we're not in here, the mouse isn't going to be visible. So if it is visible, then we just need to go set focus. So this is how we handle in the case that we drop focus for some reason. It's automatically going to give us focus again. All right, compile it and save it, and that should be it that we have for our primary HUD. Now if we come over here and we press play, everything should be working as we expect. So we come in, we don't have our inventory, press the tab key, our inventory pops up, we got our mouse cursor, we can click in different various locations just fine, press tab again, and now we got control of our screen again. The mouse cursor disappears, press tab again, pops back up. So again, we got full control, can't do anything, drag the screen around, press escape, and again, there we go. It back out. So if we open this back up, any other key press that we have that is not the tab or escape, it's not going to go away. And that's it. That's what we have for right now. So we've got the window open up. This is going to be the foundation for the rest of our videos moving forward. So I think in the next one, we're going to end up setting up the little buttons. There are going to be buttons in here that display all of our different inventory items. We're going to start setting up the functionality for that. That's going to be a little bit more complex as we move forward, but we got the window popping up here, so this is a good start for where we need to go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe while you're down there. If you got any questions, leave me a comment down below or come over, visit me in the Discord, and I'll do what I can to help you guys out. And until the next one, peace.